This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem. Okay, so we're going to continue the Beit Yosef. The issue of being in the same domain for the minyan. So it says like this. So Pekat Solim. In Psachim over there, in Pehe Amud Bet. Tana, we learned in the Mishnah there. Min ha'agaf ulifnim kelifnim, as we said, right? If you're inside the lintel, you're considered to be inside the room. Min ha'agaf ulechutz kelechutz, and outside the lintel, you're outside. Rashi explains agaf kreh kol makom agafat hadelet. So Rashi says, right? What does the word agaf mean? It's a place where the door closes, the door shuts. שהוא חופף ונוקש שם כשסגרו. When you close it, that's where it knocks into the, it touches, right? The hinge, whatever, the Dainu, so it says, explains, misfa pnimit shel oya petach. We're talking about the inner edge. From inside the edge of the thickness of the doorway, ad makom neshika, until the place where it touches the doorway. Mina gaf ulifnim. If you're inside, dainu tocha ir mamash. That means you're inside the city, whatever we're talking about here, a city, whatever. Kelifnim is considered inside. Be'ochalim sham kodashim kalim. You're allowed to eat holy things there. But if you're outside that place, it's considered you're outside. It's talking about the place where, again, it knocks into the doorway there, the door. But we don't know, what about the doorway itself? Is it considered to be inside or outside? So it explains in the Gemara, it says there, Amar Rabbi Yudah Amar Rab. Rabbi Yudah says the name of Rab. Also, when it comes to prayer, same thing. In other words, over there it's talking about eating your Pesach sacrifice, Korban Pesach. But here it's talking about now we're talking about prayers. So prayers is also the same idea. Rashi explains how if you're inside that lintel, whatever. Then he does combine with the minyan. That's sarah. But if you're outside there, you're not a part of the minyan. And no mitzaref. Even though we say in the Gemara, upliga de Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, that this argues with the opinion of Yoshua ben Levi. The Amar afilu mechitza shel bazel ena maspeket ben Israel le'avihem l'sheva shemaim. He says that even a partition made out of iron is not going to divide between the Jews and the God. וכתבו התוספות. So what does he mean to say by that? He means to say that wherever you may be, even though there's you're separated by a wall made out of iron, you're still together with the community, no matter where you are. Okay, so כתבו תוספות, says תוספות, the mashma בפרק ואלו נאמרים, implies over there in this perek in Sota Lamed Chet Amud Bet, תלכה כרבי יהושע בן לוי, that we do pass like Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, בפרק כל גגות, but in this perek, which is Eruvin, צדיק בית עמוד א', משמע דמחיצה מפסקת לצירוף, that when it comes to combining somebody in a minyan, that if you have a partition, it will divide between one group and somebody else. So he says, therefore, Pershu binyan acher, they explained it in a different way. He says, nevertheless, gam hem modim, even they admit the mechitza mafseket, that tzeruf, that the partition does divide when it comes to combining from minyan. He's beperek gagot, this perek over there, kol gagot. Ve'im ken, it says, if so, the didhu, according to them, minha agaf lifnim v'kinifnim, as we said, right? Whether if you're inside the doorway, you're considered to be inside. So that's for prayers, according to everybody, that's the way it works. The Gemara maksha, so the Gemara asks a question there. The beginning of the Mishnah and the end of the Sefer Mishnah seems to be a contradiction. Because from the beginning it implies that what about the doorway itself? Is it considered to be inside? Right. So according to there it says that it's considered to be outside. But from the end of the Mishnah, it implies that the doorway itself, kilifnim, is like inside. So Rashi explains, Agaf atzmo ovi hashar in a kisha. We're talking about the thickness of the doorway where the door slams there. Umeshane so answers lo kashya ha b'sharei Ezra ha b'sharei Yerushalayim. So says the Gemara, no problem, no contradiction. One is talking about Sharei Azara, the gates of the courtyard, and one is talking about the gates of Jerusalem. Gemara, what does that mean to say? The Sharei Yerushalayim don't need kadesh ovyan. When it comes to the gates of Jerusalem, the thickness of the lintel was not sanctified. מפני שמצורעים מגינים תחתיהם בחמה. Why is that? Because the lepers are taking shelter under that place, right? Under the lintel, under the when it comes to the sun or מפני החמה בגשמים, מפני הגשמים, also because of the rain. בשערי azara, but it says when it comes to the gates of the courtyard, nitkadesh ovyan, so there the thickness of the lintel was sanctified. Umashma lechora denayan siruf ledavar shebekdusha. So it implies that when it comes to combining for somebody for the sake of something which is holy, like 10 people, as we said, minyan agaf atzmo kilifnim, it's considered to be the lintel itself is considered to be inside. They love the ve'alma habe kilifnim. Because it says if it wasn't that it's like considered to be inside, they wouldn't have sanctified it when it comes to the courtyard. But Gam B'Sharei Yerushalayim also it says when it comes to the gates of Jerusalem, if it wasn't for the fact that the lepers sanctified it, right? Because of this reason, lepers. אבל רבנו ירוחם, but this rabbi katab, העומדים באסקופת בית הכנסת, the person who's standing in the lintel, right, as we said, of the synagogue, בעובי הפתח, the thickness of the doorway, Eli says like this, it seems to me, שאין נמנין עם מן העשרה שלפנים בבית הכנסת. They don't count with the people inside there. They don't combine. Because that place is not considered to be a part of the building, whatever, the room. And he says the source is from Pesach. It says like that says in Shemot, Exodus. It says regarding the Korban Pesach sacrifice that you shouldn't take it from the room, the flesh of the sacrifice to the outside. So we say regarding the second Pesach, that inside is considered to be inside. Perush agaf ovia petach. We're talking about the thickness of the entrance. Mina agaf ulachutz, but when it comes to outside, it's like outside, as we said, kirachutz ve'agaf atzmo. But what about the doorway itself? Sheu ovia petach, which is the thickness of the doorway. Kirachutz considered to be like outside. So we have like a dispute here regarding the doorway itself. Is it considered to be a part of the minyan or not? V'chein katav Rambam pek tet milchut korban Pesach. He also writes as the Rambam there. V'inyan outside basar korban Pesach mechavurato dagaf atzmo kilechutz. So says the Rambam that so says the Rambam here that you're considered to be outside when you're in the doorway, right? So basically, it seems like that's the conclusion here in the halakha, that a person who's standing in the doorway itself, he's considered to be outside of the room. So therefore, he doesn't combine with the minyan. Okay, very good. That's the story there. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch. This was Yud Gimel, right? Okay, 13. So we're going to see Shulchan Aruch 13. Here we go. So it says here like this in Shulchan Aruch. As we said, right, when it comes to minyan, all the 10 people have to be in one domain, one place. So it says, and also the shliach tzibur has to be with them in the same domain. So it says a person who's standing inside the doorway itself, if he's outside, so if he's inside that area, he's considered to be inside the doorway. If he's outside the doorway, he's considered to be outside of the room. So as we said in the Bet Yosef, right, that when you're in the doorway itself, you're considered to be outside. That's how we paskined. So therefore, what do you see from there, right? That a person who's praying with a minyan, he should come into the room where they are, and not just, like be outside or something, or in the doorway. This is not the proper way to do it. Okay, good. That's the story there. I hope you're following me what I'm saying. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. So let's go to Yud Daled. Now we get into another issue about that, which is, it says Bet Yosef, Tanan, 2, בפרק כיצד צולין. Also, it says over there in פסחים, החלונות ועובי החומה כלפנים. What about, okay, so we talked about the doorway, right? Now we're talking about the windows. And also the thickness of the wall is considered to be inside or outside. Rashi explains, החלונות שבחומות ירושלים. So the Rashi explains, we're talking about the windows which are in the walls of Jerusalem, and also the thickness of the top of the wall, on the top of the wall of Jerusalem. You're standing on top of the wall. It's considered to be like you're inside, if you're on the thickness of the wall, or the thickness of the window. And even though when it comes to the thickness of the doorway, we didn't say like that. Over there, that's because of the reason. Because of the lepers, they made it like this way. That's not considered to be a part inside. The lepers need that area to get shelter from the rain and from the sun. But Rambam says also regarding this, the Rambam says, when it comes to Korban Pesach, sacrifice of Pesach, Kamar, he's talking about that. It says also then in Gemara, Gagin ve'aliyot lo nitkadeshu, that he says that the roof and the upper stories were not sanctified when it comes to Jerusalem. The Katav Rabbeinu Yocham says Rabbeinu Yocham regarding that. Shenireh li shebechol zeh hu adin lebet hakneset. The same thing also applies to the synagogue as well. The Gagin ve'aliyot enam miklal bet hakbayit. It says the roofs and the upper stories are not considered to be a part of the synagogue. That's what we talked about regarding the women's section, right? So the truth is, if you're standing in the women's section, according to this, you're not a part of the minyan because you're on the second floor. We're talking about places where the women's section, the women are upstairs, right? Like in the Sephardi shuls, usually the women's are always upstairs. Okay, so then and then he says but when it comes to the windows and the thickness of the wall, you're considered like inside. Umashmali, so it says, it implies to me to hide the chalonot be'ovi aktalim kilifnim. Then when we say that when it comes to the windows and the thickness of the walls, they're like inside. We're talking about where his head and the majority of his body are inside the window, while ovi akotel are on top of the thickness of the wall. And you can see it from inside the synagogue. So he says, I found that this rabbi wrote, B'Shem Gaon, the name of one of the Gaonim, that if he sticks his head into the window, he combines with them the minyan asa when it comes to 10 people. And he didn't differentiate with this like that. Also says in Aruch Chaim, this language there, Katav Rabbeinu Hai, says Rabbeinu Hai, Misha Omed Achorei Bet HaKnesset, somebody who's standing behind the synagogue, Ubenehem Achalon, and between them is like a window, even if it's several stories high, this window, even though it doesn't have the width of 4 amot, whatever, 4 tfachim, whatever. And lahem panav, and he shows him his face there. Misham mitzaref. He combines with them imahem lasa for 10 people. Ad kana shalom. Okay, that's the end of the Beit Yosef. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch there. So it says here like that. Misha omed acharei beit knesset. Somebody who's standing behind the synagogue. Uvenehem chalon. And there's a window between them and the synagogue, right? The window separates them. Afilu gavua kama komod. Even if it's several stories high, afilu eno rachav arba. Even though it doesn't have the width of 4 tfachim. Umar elahem panav misham. And he shows his face from there. Mitzaref imahem liasa. He does combine with 10 people. Says the Rama, Gagin ve'aliot ena bichlal bait. But he says when it comes to the roof and the upper stories, they're not considered to be a part of the room of the synagogue. Ve'omed alehem eno mitzaref. So therefore, a person who's standing there does not combine. Okay, good. So just to make you understand, right? How does this affect us? What's the practical issue here? That if you're standing inside the window, where this that opens into the synagogue, and you're outside, if they can see you from there, you're considered to be a part of the minyan. So you see from here that visual connection connects you with the minyan. If there's a visual connection, what does that mean? You see them, they see you, right? That's already good enough. And so even though you're outside, but the fact that there's a visual connection, right, connects you. Same thing as, by the way, it was also said regarding zimun, that the Birkat Hamazon, when they say zimun, that if there's a visual connection, they can see each other, they're considered to be one group, even though they're in a different room. So basically, we see from here, right, a rule, which is that there's 2 ways to combine with the minyan. The simple way, right, the more immediate way, is to be inside the room with them. If you're not inside the room with them, if there's a visual connection between you and them, that also combines you, even though you're outside. Okay, so I guess we'll go to the next one. This is also another application of this rule. Just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, so now it says Bet Yosef. This is actually from the Torah, this language. Let's say some of them are inside, some of them are outside the room. But you have the Chazan, who is inside the doorway, right? Says the Rosh used to say that he combines them. So they're standing in 2 different domains, half here, half there, and the Chazan is in the middle. He combines them. So it says regarding this, the Bet Yosef, he says it seems like he learned this from Zimun, right? As we said, the Zimun is when they do the blessing for Birkat Hamazon together before they start Birkat Hamazon. That's called Zimun. So she'im mevarech Yosef al petach al miftan habayit u'mitzarfan. That if the one who's blessing is standing in the doorway, he combines them. Like we're going to explain in this chapter, which is 195. All right, with God's help. Okay, good. That's the end of it. Very good. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch on that. And it says the Shulchan Aruch, if some of them are inside the room, some of them are outside the room. ושליח ציבור בתוך הפתח, and the chazan is in the doorway, he combines them. So there you go, right? So you see from there, how does this happen? Just like from zimun, right? That zimun you're combined when you have visual contact. Here also, the visual contact is what combines you, even though you're standing in a different domain. So now he says another variation on this. The tour. If you have like let's say 2 courtyards, right? And what happened was that the wall between them broke down, and now these 2 courtyards are connected by way of the wall which got knocked down. So he's saying, right, that the wall got knocked down totally. That means it's like they're totally open one to the other. So now the question is, are they considered to be one domain or 2 domains? This issue, right, with the courtyard, that the wall got knocked down. When the wall was there, obviously it was considered to be 2 domains. But now that the wall got knocked down totally, maybe it's considered to be like one big room. This is the question, right? So regarding this, we have to see the tour, what he says about this. Let's see 1 second, the tour. So it says the tour like this. He says, if you have 9 people in the big courtyard and 1 person in the small one, right? Do they combine to be minyan? So he says mitzarfin. They do combine. Why is that? Because the small one goes after the big one, right? It's considered to be like a subsidiary of it. So therefore it's considered to be like inside the big one. And since the majority of people are in the big one, and with the small one, there's 1 guy there. Now it goes into a different case here. So in other words, in that case, we say that it does combine. Why is that? Because majority are in the big one, and only 1 is in the small one. So therefore, the small one is considered to be a subsidiary of the big one, and therefore they do combine. Then he gives another variation. Let's say you have 9 in a small one and 1 guy in the big one. How does it work with that? Or let's say 50-50, right? 5 over here, 5 over there. Does that combine? So he says, they don't combine in a case like that. So also, when it comes to the shliach tzibur, let's say the shliach tzibur is in the small one, but and there's 9 guys are in the big one. So there, they do fulfill the obligation. Why? Because they are they're like subsidiary with I'm sorry, he is subsidiary to them. Hayahu bigdola. What about if he was in the big one, right? The shliach tzibur, but tet b'biktana, and 9 in the small one, and any yotzim, then they don't combine. She'en atzibur nigarin acharav, because the tzibur, which is the majority, the community, 9 people, are not going to go after, right, the subsidiary to the chazan, which is only 1. So says the tour. Okay, I guess we'll stop there and see the Bet Yosef first. Then it goes into something else there. So says Bet Yosef, Perek Kol HaGagol, it's over there in Eruvin, Tzadik Bet Amud Bet, Tish'a Bigdola V'Yachid B'Ktana. Let's say you have 9 guys in the big one, in the big courtyard, V'Yachid B'Ktana. We're talking about 1 guy in the small one. With Starfin, they do combine. Tish'a B'Ktana. We have 9 in the small one, V'Yachid B'Gdola, and 1 in this big one, and with Starfin, they don't combine. Katut Tosfot says Tosfot regarding that. Be'arosh, and the Rosh, Tish'a B'Ktana. If you have 9 people in the small one, V'Yachid B'Gdola, and one in the big one, and with Starfin, they don't combine. Ve'hu ad-din le'chamisha B'Ktana ve'chamisha B'Gdola. Same thing also applies when you have 5 in the small one and 5 in the big one, and with Starfin, they don't combine. The agav the nakat beresha. So it says this is by dint of what it says in the beginning. I'm sorry, because he brought in the beginning Tish'ak the big dolat, 9 guys in the big one, Nakat Nami Tisha Biktana. He also said, right, 9 guys in the small one, B'Sefa. In other words, for the sake of symmetry, he used 9 and 1 in both cases. So it's also what he wrote regarding the Shliach Tzibur, Haya Shliach Tzibur Biktana, that the Shliach Tzibur was in a small one. So it says Pashut Cham. It's in the Gemara there simply, very simple. Rashi explains the Shliach Tzibur Bigdola, that when the Chazan is in the big one, but Tzibur Biktana, and the community is in the small one, and you're seeing the Dechavatan. They don't combine like that. The Tzibur the Kaime Biktana, because when you have the community in the small one, Lo Matzina Nememar the Shayche Abatra Abatre Deruva. We can't say that they combine with the majority, batar chad, because of one person. Lord, let me just get this language straight here. I'll read this again more time. Rashi explains like this: the shliach tzibur bigdola, when the chazan is in the big one, the tzibur bigtana, and the community is in the small one. And yotzin dechovan, so they don't combine there. They don't fully obligation. The tzibur, the kaima bigtana, the ones that are standing in the community, the small one, they don't fully obligation there. We can't say, right, that they're considered a subsidiary to him. Why? Because a majority doesn't become a subsidiary to one person. It doesn't work like that. That's what Rabbeinu wrote to Tur. The tzibur doesn't go after him. Uperush nifratza bimlu'a legdola. What's the perush, the explanation, right? How that one was broken all the way, reached one in its entirety to the other. That the small courtyard was totally breached where it's connected to the big one. And all that wall fell down. It all collapsed. Which was separating between one domain and the other. But he says, when it comes to the big courtyard, there is still some wall left. Why? Because there are some of the part of the wall which doesn't connect with the small one because of the size. Because you have, right, it fell some parts of the wall fell from one to the other. So therefore, the big one is like separate from the small because there's still some partition left over. But the small one is not separate from the big one, right? Because it's totally breached to the big one, right? There's nothing. There's no wall left there at all. So therefore, it's considered to be like a little corner of the big one, subsidiary. Okay, good. Let's see Shulchan Aruch here. You have a small courtyard that was totally breached to the big one. The whole wall fell down, right? That means the small one was totally breached in the place where it's connected to the big one. And all that wall fell down. That was separating between them. Right? So, but when it comes to the big one, there's still some wall left over there because some of it is not really connected to the small courtyard. It's larger, so there's slack left over there. So you have some remainder of the wall from one side and from the other as well. So it's not totally breached. So in a case like that, says Shulchan Aruch, Hagdola kemufleget min haktana. So the big one is considered to be separate from the small one. But the small one is not considered to be separate from the big one. Rather, it's considered to be like a corner, a little corner, subsidiary of the large courtyard. Lefichach says, therefore, im tisha bigdola v'echad b'ktana, if 9 people are in the big one, and one guy's in the small one, what happens over there? Mistafrin, they do combine. Why is that? Shaktana nigret achak gdola. Because the small one is a subsidiary of the big one. He betoch hagdola. So it's considered to be like a part of the big one. Kiman sharov bigdola, because the majority here are in the big one. But if the majority are in the small one, and one guy's in the big one, or 50-50, right? 5 over here, 5 over there. What happens over there? And Mr. They don't combine. Okay, that's that. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate. Okay, let's see. I think there's one more Shulchan Aruch here. So it says like this. Let's say you have the Shliach Tzibur, the Chazan, in the small courtyard. Tzibur bigdola, and the Tzibur is in the big one, right? Motzin Yedei Chavatan. So there, they combine, considered to be like one minyan. It works well. Why is that? Because he gets dragged along with them, right? Since he's the minority. אבל אם היה שליח ציבור בגדולה, but if the chazan is in the big one, the ציבור בקטנה, and the community is in the small one, אינן מציעים ידי חובתם. So there they don't combine. שאין הרוב נגרר אחר היחיד. Why is that? Because the majority doesn't drag along, get dragged on with the individual. Okay, that's it. So let's go on here. Says Bet Yosef further on. Katav Rabbeinu Yerucham. Says Rabbeinu Yerucham. Nireli. Seems to me ki en le'avi mikan raya le'otam lomdim be'azara. But it says it seems to me that you can't bring really a source from here regarding people who are standing in the courtyard. Berova asara omdim be'bet knesset. And most of the people are standing in the synagogue. So the question is like this, right? If most people are standing in the synagogue, and there are some people standing in the parking lot, right? Something like that, right? The question is, do they combine to be a minyan? This is what he's talking about here. So can we learn this halacha from the courtyard that we just mentioned? What to do there? So he says, it seems to him that it's not the same thing, these two cases. They don't really resemble one the other. So the question is why, right? Let's see why. Because there we were talking about what? When it comes to the courtyard, that the small one was totally breached to the big one. The whole wall fell down. Not so when it comes to the synagogue and the parking lot, right? The wall didn't fall down there. So it's not the same thing. Although the Bet Knesset, when it comes to the shul, yesh mechitzot benehem. There's a partition between them. The wall is still there, right? The synagogue didn't collapse, right? That's not what happened there. So everything is intact. So then the question is, the guys who are standing in the parking lot, how are they going to combine with the people who are inside the shul? There's no way to combine them like that. So he says it also, the opening of the doorway is considered to be like there's a partition there. So it says Bet Yosef, that's clear, right? His words are very clear. There's nothing to talk about there. So therefore, what do you see from here? That if you have most of the minyan, right? Let's say 8 guys in the shul and 2 guys in the parking lot, right? They're not going to combine to be a minyan because there's a wall between them. But you're going to tell me, but wait, we'll open the door, and the doorway will combine them. No, the doorway doesn't combine them. It's still considered to be a partition there. So therefore, that won't work. That's the idea. Okay, let's see the Shulchan Aruch there. Im ktsata asara bebet knesset. Says the Shulchan Aruch like this: If some of the minyan is inside the shul, and some of them are in the parking lot, right? Whatever, outside there, right? In the courtyard or whatever, and they don't combine. This is the rule. But we have to make a little bit of a caveat here with these rules. That as we already mentioned, when there's a visual contact between them, they can see, some of them each other. They do combine. So therefore, right, according to that, which we said they do combine, here we're talking about that they can't visually see each other, right? And that's the reason why they don't combine. So if there's visual contact between them, they do combine. And by the way, there's a big machloket about this in the poskim. There's a big dispute. I one time wrote an essay on this, and when I was in Israel, and I proved over there that the rule is that they do combine when there's visual contact. So therefore, the rule is according to that which we just mentioned, that let's say, for instance, I'll give you an example, right? How that works. Let's say you have downstairs, in the shul, you have some people, and you have in the ladies section. Let's say the ladies didn't come, so there's some few guys standing there and praying there. So the question is, do they combine with the guys downstairs, in the shul? So if there's visual contact between them, according to what we said, they do combine. They can see each other. But if there's no visual contact, they don't combine. Why? Because they're in a separate domain. One is upstairs, one is downstairs. One has nothing to do with the other, right? Really, the truth is. That's one thing. Another thing is also like this, right? As we said, that if you have, let's say, the minyan inside the room in the shul, and there are some people outside, and like the door is open, right? So as we said, right, the fact that the door is open doesn't mean that there's one domain. Doesn't make them into one domain. But there's still two domains there. But if there's visual contact between them, they can see each other, they do combine. If they don't see each other, they don't combine. And by the way, the rule is you don't have to see everybody. I'm not talking to see everybody there. Some see some, some of them see some of them. That's what it means, right? As long as you have some kind of visual contact there, they do combine. So that's the way to do it. If a person can't come into the room for some reason, he needs to pray upstairs or he needs to pray outside, whatever the reason may be, right? All kinds of reasons, occur. So the way to do it would be to form some kind of visual connection between him and the community inside, and this way he'll combine with them. Otherwise, he's not a part of them.
I do have a question. So about the window, would it be the same way if you had a window and you can see outside?
Right. So we mentioned
that
we mentioned that before, right? At the beginning, that if you show yourself through the window, you combine.
Okay.
As long as they can see you, somebody can see you there.
It's one domain. So that will be the loophole.
It's not that it's one domain, but you combine with them, That's what it is, right? You combine. It's not really one domain, but you're like defeating the system there, Whatever, right?
Is it like an exception, that only if they can see each other, visually connect, right?
Right, exactly. And we learned this from the laws of Zimun, It says in the Mishnah, Masechet Brachot, that if they can see each other, they combine, even though they're not in the same room.
So that's like a condition, no?
This is like the exception to the rule, basically, whatever you want to call it, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, God bless. Very good. So we're going to now 19. Says Bet Yosef, Katav Rabbeinu Hagadol. Says this Rabbi, Maria Vuhav, Zal, Beinyan Tziruf HaTeva. So the question is, what about combining the Holy Ark, right? Shemitztaref HaChazan Le'ashtim L'Asara. That the Chazan combines to make a minyan. Right? So he says there are those that scorn this kind of idea. They don't believe in it. Oh, interesting. So he says, you know why? Because the Holy Ark, he says, is considered to be like a second floor. That's very interesting. I don't know exactly how the picture looks there, but we'll try to figure it out. So it says, it doesn't combine. So he says, you know what? But it's considered to be really like nullified, with regards to the synagogue. So therefore, it's like one domain. That's what he's trying to say. Because it's considered to be like a usage of the synagogue. Kotel ve'afar shehu bebet knesset. So this is like a wall in the synagogue. Gavua, it's like high up, that it does combine. Hine amechitzot sheyesh leteva. So he says those walls that are in the Aron Kodesh, in the Holy Ark, it's only for beauty, for aesthetics. So he says lo lehavdil mechitza b'fnei atzma. So it's not considered like a separation of domain. It's very interesting what he's saying here. That's how people are accustomed to do. That's the end. So so he says the Rashba also writes the same thing. B'tshuva, right? What does that mean? The reason is because even though this ark is high 10 tfachim, so it's like a separate domain. And also it's got the width of 4 tfachim, and so it's like a separate domain. And then it also has these partitions, right? So it's like you would think it's a separate domain. And now the tashmish bifnei atzma. It's not like you're not using it as a usage by itself. So it's subsidiary to the synagogue. That's what he's trying to say. It's a part of the shul. So he says the legs of the synagogue, it says, are inside there, whatever, inside of it. So it says it's considered to be like writing that we place in the Sefer Torah, even if it's high. It's a little bit high. Doesn't separate, doesn't interpose. Like we say in Perek Elun Emarim, in Sotah Lamed Chet Amud Bet, or Perek HaChalil also there in Sukkah Lamed Aleph Amud Bet. Bima Gdola, if you have like a big ark, right? Big stage, whatever, platform, which is made out of wood, right? Benuya be'emtza, which is in the middle of the synagogue. The Chazan HaKnesset omed alea, and the shul, right? One of the appointees of the shul, right, stands there. B'samak katab b'siman reish pebel. It says there's samak gabe chamisha sheshroin b'taklin, regarding 5 of them that are in the house. Ve'im yesh b'nehem mechitzot megiot letikra, and there is between them, right, partitions that go to the roof. Tzarich eruv lechol echad. So each one is his own eruv. The echad en magiot letikra. If they don't come to the ceiling, eruv echad lekulan. So then one eruv can be done for everybody else. The mikan yesh lismoch leinyan hashtamat asara. So it says from here you can rely also regarding the issue of 10 people in the minyan, the tefillah for prayers. The lo have hafsaka. It's not considered a separation. Otan mechitzot haomdot saviv saviv lebima. Those partitions which are around the platform, right? The stage, whatever. Shakorin ulam mavra. They call like this. Beotam mechitzot. Also those partitions haomdot miyamin usmol leteva, which are to the right and to the left of the the ark. Even though they're high, 10 tfachim. Since they don't come all the way to the roof, mutarot at kanashano. And by the way, from here, you see probably, right, also for our purposes, let's say, for instance, as we said, right, that when it comes to the Sephardi shuls, usually the ladies are upstairs, right, and the guys are downstairs. But when it comes to the Ashkenazi shuls, right, or some shuls also, that the ladies are not upstairs; they're just on the other side of the partition, right? So the question is, if you're standing on the other side of the partition, are you a part of the minyan or not? Let's say that there's no ladies there, right? And you want to pray there for some reason on the other side. So according to this, the answer is yes, you are part of the minyan. Why is that? Because since the partition doesn't go all the way to the ceiling, right? So therefore, it's considered to be one domain. Interesting. Okay, very good. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch on that. A lot of interesting ideas coming into my head when I read these halachot. Okay, anyway, it says like this in the Shulchan Aruch. Shtiach tzibur b'teva b'tisha bet knesset. Right. So let me just explain to you. Right. I'm going to read this to you and explain to you because it's a little bit tricky. Right. What is this talking about? Maybe you didn't understand. You know when I read it. So I'll try explain to you again a little bit more elaboration. So what are we talking about here? The shtiach tzibur, the chazan, is in the teva. Right. What does that mean? He's like. It seems like the way that their synagogues were built. Right, that there was like some kind of ark, right, which holds the Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah, and that ark is like a big structure in the wall. It's not just a little closet, right? What do you call it on the outside? Some kind of like wooden little closet. We're talking about the structure it's just inside the wall itself. So what happens is, right, that the Chazan can go inside there and pray, inside that structure. So the question is, since that structure has partitions and it's also raised above the ground, is it considered to be a part of the domain of the synagogue, or is it a separate domain? That's what he's talking about here. So the answer is mitzarfin, right? They do combine. What's the reason why? So it says Shulchan Aruch, even though that those partitions are, the platform there is 10 tfachim high above the ground, which is about up to your waist, right? 10 tfachim, and rochba daled, and as also the width of 4 tfachim. Yeshtam mechitzot gevot yud, and also it has partitions which are 10 tfachim high. The reason why they do combine is because that area of the ark is considered to be a part of the shul, subsidiary to the shul. So even though there's a platform there and there's partitions, it doesn't really do anything because it's a part of the structure of the shul. So therefore they do combine. So he says there is one that says that only applies when the partitions don't go until the ceiling. But if the partitions go until the ceiling, so then they don't combine because there, right, it's totally like a different domain altogether. But it seems like the halacha is like the first opinion here, right? So therefore the rule is that even if the partitions go until the ceiling, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because it's considered to be subsidiary to the room. That whole arc structure there. That's the idea. Okay, I hope you guys are following me a little bit here. Nobody's talking anything, but all right. So hopefully you got it. Okay. So all right. Let's see what's coming on.
I'm sorry. So a separate domain would be only if the wall that is dividing that domain 1 and 2, it's all the way up to the wall, correct?
Right, but even there, if it's subsidiary to that room, it does combine anyway, according to the first opinion.
But if it's visually connected, no?
Even if there's no visual connection.
So what would be the exception then in here that it would put them into like 2 domains or 1 domain then?
Right. So in other words, what we're saying is that even though there's no visual connection, it's still 1 domain. Why? Because it's subsidiary to the room. That whole structure.
Even though in the materials, meaning if it's made out of wood or concrete, it doesn't matter in this case, yeah?
Right. So, but when you have 2 separate rooms altogether, right? 2 separate rooms, let's say you have this shul, right? The synagogue, the sanctuary where they pray, and you have the hallway outside, right?
Yeah.
The hallway. So there, it's 2 separate rooms. The hallway is not subsidiary to the synagogue. It's a different room altogether. So therefore, they don't combine unless you have visual connection. As we said, right?
But that's where I'm getting confused.
Okay, so you can listen to the lecture again. One more time, maybe you'll get it better.
Okay.
If you have any questions, let me know tomorrow. Okay, very good. Chazak Baruch, thanks for coming tonight. God bless you.
Thank you.
Blessed with wealth, health, happiness. See you tomorrow. Visit Hashem. Stay happy, stay holy. You know what the Rambam says, right? That all the days between Pesach and Shavuot are like one long holiday. So this is like Chol HaMoed, for the Rambam says. Until we get to the holiday of Shavuot, which is really like the last day of the holiday.
Mm.
So it's all holy time now, very holy time. Okay, God bless. Don't forget to count the Omer, the guys, right, the man, whatever, and the ladies remind the guys. Okay, Laila Tov.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
the best.